Hi everybody, this is Bert here, and I'm going to take you through this quick video on the Pinnacle Refresher as a way to prepare for our call which is going to be happening shortly. So we looked at what is the competency, and typically when you look at hiring people, we look at skills and knowledge. But the competency is the whole iceberg. It includes your values, your self-image, your traits, your motives, and your beliefs. So how could you uncover some of these things? What kind of questions could you ask while hiring someone for a job, and particularly a critical job where these things would make a difference? You remember that we had a video shoot and you presented on a topic that you were passionate about. Recall and review the recording that you got on how you did. What were some of the inputs that you received about yourself? What were the strong points and what were the not working yet quadrant that you noticed about yourself? The key area over here, in fact, the hidden question here is, in the strong areas, ask yourself the question, how may I do a 10x on it? So that's really the big piece, owning your strengths and really building on them. In this slide, we talked about communication is not about logic and data alone, but really about perspective, belief, and a feeling. And I'd like you to reflect on how you did in your last real-world presentation, so to say, and what did you notice? How did you bring that perspective? How did you bring your unique perspective to that presentation? How did you communicate belief and feeling apart from the data and logic that is, of course, critical as well? We talked about being congruent in how your words sound, the tone of voice, and the physiology, all communicating the same thing. And I'd like you to think of an example where this congruence showed up and your words and your tone and your body language is exactly the same. And of course, we know that congruence matters a lot because between the two choices, words or body language will always win. And your people in the audience know whether you are congruent with your message or not. So here's the big statement then. Your PPT is not your presentation. You are the presentation. I'd really like you to think about this a little bit, because this is so crucial in a world that's caught up with thinking that PowerPoint is the presentation. So do give your interpretation of what you make of this statement. Now, this was the key, so to say, formula for success that we shared. And we talked about always being more important than the doing. If you get the being right, the doing comes far more easily. And this formula actually worked from the place of first asking yourself the question, well, what is it that I want to have? And then going into the front of the line and saying, well, who is the kind of person who has that? And taking on and choosing to be that person and standing in that place, we take massive action, and then you have what you want. The question, of course, over here is, who are you being in your presentation? Are you being confident? Are you being strong? And you start noticing this will flow immediately into the next exercise that we did. We talked about how we sabotage ourselves, and these were the 4 patterns that most commonly occurred. Of course, we as human beings are infinitely creative to sabotage ourselves in multiple ways, but these are 4 common ones. I am not the right person. This is not the right time. I don't have the right answer. This is not the right place. Would you have noticed some examples of this at work? Maybe from a team member, maybe from yourself. What were some of the examples that you noticed about how you sabotaged yourself or others, or you noticed in others that they were doing? We talked about how leadership is generative. You generate who you need to be in the moment. And self-talk is what you tell yourself and how you create yourself. And so we had created a script before you do your presentation, and I'd like you to review that script for yourself And maybe in the call you might want to share what that script did for you and how you've used it for yourself. And then we did the NLP exercise. NLP, of course, stands for Neuro Linguistic Programming, embedding powerful patterns and how we can switch ourselves on in the moment as the demand rises. And this was the third level of raising ourselves and shifting ourselves at the subconscious level. So the first level was about doing it at the body level, in your breathing, in your shoulders, and in your power positions. The second was in your mind by using self-talk. And the third was in the NLP exercise where you shifted yourself, firing your anchors at the subconscious level. If you haven't been practicing that, I recommend that you should try that tonight and take some time for yourself as to how you could use this and embed it much further into your psyche. We talked about how beliefs were constructed and how they are like the legs of a chair. And these are just reference points we assume to be true. Now, the important thing is that all beliefs are constructed, and they are constructed based on not very clear, deep thinking as such, but based on perhaps a comment somebody made or a data point that somebody showed out about us. We said that all beliefs have got benefits and costs. Now, in a good world, the benefits should outweigh the cost. But there are different types of belief systems as well. We talked about limiting beliefs, which have a huge cost but have a small benefit. And it's important for us to recognize that where we have small benefits, and these are limiting beliefs that actually close in and prevent us from growing as much as we would like, in this case, we must break those limiting beliefs so that we can move forward. And so we had Mickey Mouse versus Godzilla. In limiting beliefs, the Godzilla is the big cost that we are constantly playing out by hanging on to these limiting beliefs about ourselves perhaps. And the benefits, the benefits are those real small Mickey Mouse benefits that we get. So evaluate whether you still are hanging on to any limiting beliefs that you need to smash, which you need to break, and move forward in your life with power and with purpose. We talked about managing stakeholders and how that plays a big and important part for us. I'm going to cover this quickly, but I would really like you to review how you use these tools and how it was used for you. We talked about the steps in it: identifying, listing and prioritizing, and names and faces. Usually people will do the first two and forget the third one. The third one is really critical, but I'm going to come back to this later. Connect and engage at the tactical level and monitor as well. So here are the names and the faces, and these are real people that you should be thinking of. Who are these people and do I know them? Those that you interact with regularly, you know well, you understand what it is. But some of the people you may not be interacting with as much. And it's very hard when you don't know these people, you've not interacted before, and you're suddenly asking them for a favor. Guess what will they say? Who exactly are you? Is the kind of comment you can expect to hear. So mapping your stakeholder on the influence and interest level, I'd like you to explain this slide and the next one in your specific context. What did you notice about mapping them out? Who were the important ones? Who were the key players? And who were the affected ones as well? This slide, of course, talks about how we communicate with that, and I'd like you to look at this slide, connect it with the previous one, and share with us how you could use this matrix of influence and interest. Then, of course, there was this question of running your stakeholder TrustNet tool itself. I would strongly recommend that if you haven't done so with your stakeholder, that you should do it. It's just a great exercise when you talk to your stakeholder and you uncover stuff which you assumed, which you thought was true, but actually was totally untrue, or perhaps was totally off the wall. Running a stakeholder TrustNet tool can give you a big jump forward. We talked about the dimensions that were involved in the stakeholder TrustNet, and the smaller the point size, if your score is low, then it will be 1. If your score is high, it would be a 5. Which ones are important to you and your stakeholder? Which ones are really top? What are the top 3 that were important to you to win your trust? So in this case, for example, I picked communication, integrity, and competence. We talked about doing the self-assessment where you connected the dots and said, well, I guess this is how I'm doing with this specific stakeholder. Now this is an exercise that you need to do with each one of your critical stakeholders so you know where you stand with them. Then of course you send that file to them, send that PDF off to them, ask them to fill it in and send it back to you, and that becomes a real great conversation point as to where the challenge is. So here you are, you've got your view versus your stakeholders, and you start noticing some of them are totally in sync, such as competence is fine, but you start noticing some worrying things as well. And it's up to you to have this conversation with your stakeholder so that you can rectify some of these gaps which may be quite unseen but are like that just like the rock that's going to sink the Titanic if you don't have this in place. Your conversation should be about what you could stop, start, and keep. How could you use this tool for getting specific feedback while working with your. Here is some examples of that. I'll just go through one of them. For example, start building more domain knowledge and present new ideas might be something that your stakeholder might be saying, you know, this is what I really need from you. And the why question, of course, is that I need to have more innovation value from you. You do meet SLAs, but I'm not getting enough of innovation from you. So that's about the tool that you might want to keep in mind as we get into our call shortly. I would really like you to reflect about yourself, how you're doing, because your self-awareness is absolutely critical as a leader and how you grow. So thank you so much for watching and listening. I'm going to be really looking forward to being with you shortly. Thanks so much. This is Bert signing off.